So it was a very lean handover in microphones, by the way. Thank you. Almost like in Formula One. I know I'm the last person tonight, and some of you were apparently already so tired that you left. For those that are still here, who of you has missed one or two talks today? You've all been here the whole day? One person missed something? Okay, a few people have missed something. That's good, actually, because I'll try to summarize in a very subjective way my key takeaways from today and from a conference like this one. For those of you who have been here literally for every single session, there might be some repetition, but I think that's okay as well. Before I get started, let me briefly talk about myself, or more or less also my company. You already heard a bit about myself before. 2 years ago, I joined WhatAdventure, which is a Vienna-based innovation consultancy. We're by now 30 people. We do innovation programs around mostly Europe, German-speaking countries. And as you may be able to see here, we have offices in 5 countries. So that's Cologne, Vienna, Bolzano in Italy, and Lima in Peru. And yeah, 5 countries. Well, there's one missing. That's Tehran in Iran, because you have US8 as a sponsor. I took it off because I didn't want to get you in trouble here. Yeah, what we started doing initially is actually building a lean innovation concept, so a framework. And in fact, some of you, is anyone attending next week's Academy by ICT Hub? Wonderful. You're going to see our box in action because we put this process into a beautiful paper box. We're still trying to ship them down here. They were rejected at customs last week, but we hope that we actually get them here for you next week. And we also have this whole thing online. So if you go to whatadventure.com, you can find the digital version of that. And to tell you a little anecdote of how also we actually started, failed, pivoted, and so on, we initially tried to make this a gamified educational tool. We tried to make this something where people enjoy validating their ideas, writing down their hypotheses, and it so really looked a bit like SimCity. Do you know that computer game? Yeah, we tried building companies like SimCity, and it terribly failed. Nobody wanted it. That was our start 5 years ago, and then we started doing more and more consulting, and some of those anecdotes from my work as a consultant with WhatAdventure I'll share with you now, wrapped into what I hope is a good summary of today as well. These are a few of the customers we work with. And yeah, so I actually, as I said, spent most of my time with these people on the consulting side, not so much on the tool side. 10 steps to get corporate innovation all wrong. So if you don't like it, you can at least count. Yeah? So after 10, there will be an end. The first one, go to Silicon Valley. Who of you has been to Silicon Valley? Only one. Who of you, all the other ones who haven't been there, has thought about doing one of these learning journeys? Learning journeys when a consultant tells you to spend 15,000 euros plus a flight plus a 5-star hotel to go with him to Silicon Valley. You thought about it. Anyone else? That's pretty good. I would really advise against doing that, not only because it's expensive, we can always argue about value, but mostly what you do on most of these tours, not all of them, but most of these tours, what you do is you get tours at Facebook and Google. And guess what? Because so many European medium-sized and large companies sent lots of executives over to Silicon Valley, they actually hired people at Google and Facebook to give tours around the office to show them the colorful chairs and that people really wear flip-flops. And then if you listen to Sonia earlier today, that's where this feeling comes from, that if you hire somebody from Google and give your people flip-flops, then suddenly magic will happen. This is not the case. Obviously, there are good things to learn from Silicon Valley, but there are people that you probably even know. If you looked into LinkedIn, there are Serbians. I, in fact, know a few in Silicon Valley, but also in Berlin, in New York, and so on. I can happily put you in touch with them that actually live there, that actually do fundraising for early-stage startups, that actually work in some of the larger, more grown-up companies. And it's, I think, much more intelligent to work with these people, to listen to them, to meet them, for, have some food with them, visit them at home, and understand what it's really about to be in this probably still world-leading innovation ecosystem. But don't book these tours, please. Yeah? Because, again, all you can see then is the most expensive real estate in the world and lots of traffic jams if you don't know who to talk to. One thing you can learn from Silicon Valley, and as you heard in the introduction, I've been working in that field myself a bit, is how to do acceleration, how to get ideas into what also I think Georgie mentioned before, MVP stage. And accelerators really, that's how the way I always explain it to people, is MBA programs for startups. And the same way as there are many, many MBA programs out there, there's only very few famous ones, whether that's Harvard or Stanford in the US, INSEAD in Europe, and so on and so forth. And with accelerators, it's very much the same thing. If you come to the US by now, You have Y Combinator, you have maybe 500 startups. In Europe, you have Startup Bootcamp, and then there are many, many others, but by far not as famous. So one more thing to get it completely wrong is to come back and say, we need our own accelerator, no matter what. No matter what the cost, no matter whether anybody's going to care about working with us as a corporation. Now, I'm not saying it's a totally bad idea for every single one company. I know there are Serbian companies like Delta Corporation that actually started accelerators, and I think it can be a good thing. But literally, there's only 1 in 10 of my clients where I really would say it makes sense to have an accelerator on your own. One such example is Agro Innovation Lab. It started in Vienna, but now it's actually co-owned by 2 cooperatives in the agricultural sector, one from Germany, one from Austria. And they, when they started in 2015 together with us, were the first AgTech-focused accelerator in Europe. And with that, they really managed to draw a lot of attention from around Europe, but even beyond. We get applications to this program in the hundreds every year from up to 100 countries, in fact. We have taken teams into the program from Korea, from Brazil, from the US, from all over Europe. And so this is one of the few cases where I would say it really makes sense. If you can be the first in your industry, if your industry is rather late to the game of innovation, if it's rather late to the game of digitalization. Yeah? Another example is a friend of mine doing this in Frankfurt in the real estate sector, yeah? PropTech it's called. Another one is in a very focused one that was run in Berlin for a while, ended now on the topic of eye healthcare. Yeah? So very focused, very specific programs that really are the first in a large region, the first in an industry. I think there it can make sense. If you otherwise ever think about it, if your company ever thinks about doing an accelerator, rather say no, or at least, and we learned about the zebra before, look for the evidence why it makes sense. Alternatives to that usually are joining forces with others. I'm not sure whether you've ever heard of these names. 2 of my clients in Germany, that's DHL, Deutsche Post, and Daimler, the car maker, Mercedes-Benz. They both are partners in Startup Autobahn together with Porsche. So this is one accelerator program for the automotive and mobility industry based in Stuttgart. And not industry focused, but also a very broad, let's say, consortium of companies is running We Accelerate in Vienna, which is where I live, coincidentally. And We Accelerate is basically 12 B2B focused Austrian corporations from across the board. So there's a telco in there, utility company in there, et cetera, and they together run one co-working space in the center of Vienna with about 50 teams being invited twice a year into an acceleration program. These are the alternatives that I would strongly suggest to most companies. Because the last thing you want to be, no matter how innovative you are, and I know we have Société Générale here as a sponsor from the banking sector. We heard about fintech earlier today, I think with one of the case studies. No matter how innovative you are, if you in 2018 or then 2019 want to start a fintech accelerator in Belgrade or no matter where, yeah, you're not going to be the first. You're going to be number 37 if you're lucky. And probably that's not going to attract the very best startups exactly to you. That's why I would strongly, for most people who think about acceleration, I know it's still a hot topic, recommend going it together with others rather than going it by yourself. Quick question in between, talked about accelerators. How do you select teams, whether it's from the startup world or whether it's internally? What is most important for you? Team, technology, traction, or the market? Anyone? Just shout it out. Say again? Team. Any other opinion? Say again? A combination. That's the easy way out, isn't it? Yeah. It's a zebra. A zebra is not on the list. No, I would typically agree, but normally team is not the answer that comes. So that actually really means you've been here all day. I think you've learned something along the way, or you've already been doing it all the time. Yeah. You wanted to say something else? No, okay, great. So I did this test actually a year ago in Japan, and there I had a room of 23 corporate leaders in front of me who together all agreed actually that of course the most important is the market followed by technology. And I told them that's the German/Japanese approach because we always love to focus on engineering and patents and then seeing a huge market in front of us for that patent or that technology. And obviously, and this, again, and apparently most of you know, venture capitalists, whether in the US or anywhere else, really look at, especially at early stage teams, the other way around. And something I find really interesting is that now that we see more and more innovation happening inside corporations, this still isn't exactly the case. Yeah? So you don't see the team being at the center. We heard before from Georgia how important it is to have these interdisciplinary teams. I work with lots of corporate teams, and because it often is partly driven by HR, partly driven by, let's say, cultural change goals, they say, oh, if a team actually comes to us with an idea, we cannot tell them that they have to change the team because it's so great that they came. We cannot force them to accept another co-founder. We cannot tell them that because they don't have a developer, they're not a complete team. Yeah? And I think this is exactly what we heard from Georgie before, that this will stop you from being agile. This will stop you from having the right skills combined. You And again, I think in the corporate landscape where, yes, you typically have these, let's say, partly competing goals, that you want to see great products, you want to see things happening fast, and at the same time, you don't want to discourage the people. You're just motivated to actually step up, step forward, and do things. You need to balance this team element, I think, very critically. So, up to this point, you've been to Silicon Valley, you have your accelerator, and there's still zero change inside your organization, right? Because you just pay a lot of money for somebody to run your accelerator, and you spend a lot of money for going to Silicon Valley, and your people are still sitting there at their desks, and what we just talked about, they didn't even form a team, they didn't even, submit any ideas, started working on anything, and so on. How do you go from there? Tip number 3, develop ideas in PowerPoint. And please, really, this is important to remember, only in PowerPoint. Don't do anything else. Don't let people go to a lab. Don't let them actually experiment. Yeah? Also, don't let them look at data. This is dangerous. Let them only do PowerPoint. Yeah? I think we talked before a bit about qualitative versus quantitative KPIs. Only qualitative. Yeah? Nice drawings, nice diagrams, how the future could look like in 10 years. Don't look at data. Don't go out into the field. Don't talk to customers. All these important things, right? Next one, also really important, really popular with many of my clients still also, is focus on your footprint. Who knows this country? Hands up. Anyone? What is it? No, it's not Austria. If World War II had turned out differently, this could have been Austria, that's right. What is it? No, it's not Baden-Württemberg. Great, as somebody who knows the 16 federal states of Germany, but we have no federal state with some island in between. It says Vienna somewhere in German, so it's for those that speak a bit of German or know how to spell Vienna in German, yes, it is part of Austria. This is no country. This is also not a federal state of Austria. This is the grid network of Wien Energie, Austria's largest utility company that happens to be based in Vienna. And this is basically the area that their power lines cover. Now, Wien Energie is a wonderful client of our company, but in the beginning, when we started working with them 3-4 years ago, they always told us, please find startups with them we want to do innovation in our grid area. And we said, well, it's going to be difficult to tell startups somewhere out there in the world, for example, also in Serbia, that the market they should address looks like that. And they said, no, don't bring any startups from Serbia. They don't speak German. And we were like, well, but yeah, what's the problem? They were like, well, our people don't speak any English. It's of course not true. In reality, many of them do, but often it was then, the Works Council, HR, top management, they were all afraid of exposing their employees to having to deal with other people that don't speak their language, and maybe sometimes having to look up a word. Yeah, so I think the first 2 years with Wien Energie, we dealt only with German-speaking startups that could read this map and find out that this is a market. And as you can imagine, as I said before, when you do these, in this case it was not an accelerator, but a cooperation program, if you limit yourself so much from the beginning, you're not going to get the greatest results. It's pure statistics, right? And if something happens, it's the accident that just confirms the rule. Another thing that's great is the other way around. If you're a global company, and my main client this year that I spend the most time with is Deutsche Post DHL. They operate in 200 countries, and where I hide Iran on the map, the only country they hide, I think, is North Korea, but a friend of mine was there, and he has seen a DHL truck also in North Korea. Now, the board member that funded one of the teams, and 2 of the guys are here standing next to me, said in May this year, no joke, he said, go to India, you have 90 days to make your solution happen in my new Indian venture. They have like a greenfield thing, they buy 1,000 trucks and they wanted to see this happening there. Come back after 90 days, if you make it happen in India, I fund your startup basically, your internal startup, your spin-off. So we did exactly as told. We went to India, as you can see, talked to these people, looked at the trucks, spent 3 days in Mumbai. This is the stupidest thing you can do with a 2.5-person team that has an innovation, has a product, is basically ready to launch in whatever European market you want to go into. And then you say, well, why don't you try it in India? Because I, as a board member, that's one of those hippos again, right? Highest paid person in the room, was new to me. Basically saying, look, I have my pet project in India, why don't you go there first? It wasted so much time and energy. And these are great colleagues in India, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just more complicated because it's far away and you have import duties and all that stuff, right? So whatever your footprint is, if you want to work in innovation, if you want to work with external startups, if you want to enable your people to do stuff, Don't limit them to the footprint you have today in Vojvodina, or whatever it might be, and also don't send them to the other end of the world because you think it's a good idea. Let them find out where to go. Next one. Expect nothing less but the next Instagram, right? I mean, you've been to Silicon Valley, you did that startup accelerator program, you maybe have an entrepreneurship program, you give them all the resources, all the love that they need, really, to build the next Instagram. And you're just waiting for that phone call from Mark Zuckerberg to say he wants to wire you €1 billion to buy that team of 3 inside your company that you give, usually 1 day a week, 1.5 days a week to work on that project because they still have their day job, right? Yeah, so the only thing you want to discuss with Mark Zuckerberg really is who's going to take over the day job of the people he's going to buy for $1 billion, right? That's not exactly how it works. Why I took Instagram is actually, as you can see, this is a picture. It could have been on Instagram, would not have gotten really many likes and hearts. It's a picture taken from a train. And one of my clients is a railroad operator, and they literally funded a team, and in this case, to be honest, the team also was very excited about it. They funded a team to build an app for all their travelers, right? Millions of people in Europe traveling on railroads, especially on theirs, to upload pictures that they take from the train. And they thought it's going to be an instant hit, of course, right? Because they have all these customers, millions of loyalty card customers, millions of travelers almost every day, and they're all going to download this app and going to share their photos taken from the train. Now, obviously, an app where you can share photos taken from the train is nothing else but an app to share photos, and guess what? There were already a few out there. So didn't quite work. Also really important, if you already don't get the Instagram, don't let anyone challenge you. Because obviously, I mean, you've been working for decades on having the perfect organization in place. Hiring, salary structures, hierarchy, most important of all, processes, bureaucracy, right? It's all there. They just need to use it. And literally, we have these discussions, now joke aside again, where corporates tell us, look, the great benefit to our intrapreneurs is that they can leverage all these resources, like the legal department. I spent the last 2 months debating with the legal department of what all is not possible. Yeah? It's not really helpful. You start writing more contracts than ever in a normal startup if you try to have an entrepreneurship program do something that actually touches customers of a large corporate. It's crazy. Now, what also wouldn't happen is, and let me introduce you again to the guys with the trucks in India, right? You may recognize the same guy here. That's Aaron from the UK. Aaron spent 10 years in Deutsche Post DHL, concretely in their UK division, somewhere in the UK, actually lives in Rugby near Coventry, and runs their trucking business. Yeah? So he has about 5,000 trucks, 15,000 trailers, and a team of 50 people, and he's responsible for making sure that those trucks are on the road, need to go where they need to go every day. He never put a foot into university. He was never, let's say, on the career track inside DHL for upper management, because usually it's a German company that requires a PhD at minimum. Right? So you can never become a board member, really, in a German corporate unless you have a PhD. So this guy, 2 years ago, met another colleague with a similar profile, and they realized that when you put solar panels on top of trucks and put the electricity into the battery of that truck, and we're talking about a diesel truck, not a Tesla Semi or whatever, that this saves 5% in fuel. Something that Daimler didn't find out because they were too busy optimizing the diesel engine, something that nobody else found out. They somehow came up with this. And again, that's why they were sent to India in the end, as a thank you. But these guys now internally created this startup, basically, this in-house startup, if you like to say. And what I think is really fascinating is you suddenly have 2 guys leading. In September, we spun it out, so it became a separate legal entity. They're now managing directors of a new company. It's called Trailer. And they start hiring people, so far, of course, mostly from within DHL. And one of their first hires, in fact, the most junior person in terms of rank on the team, is the gentleman standing next to him here, Sebastian. Sebastian has a PhD in environmental sciences. So you have a person with 10-year work experience, no academic degree whatsoever, hiring a PhD. Trust me, at least in German and Austrian companies, this is probably unheard of. And this only works if you let them do what they want to do, and if you let people attract other people to what they want to do, and build those, sorry for coming always back to you, but interdisciplinary teams. Yeah? People are going to think afterwards that your company is called interdisciplinary, I think. But what's called 30 Hills? Yeah, okay. I need to remember that one as well, I think. All right. Another one that's really important is not only that you start to create that mobility, that you're flexible when it comes to hiring processes, minimum criteria, ideally get rid of all that. What is, I think, also really important is that you have diversity. And why I say that is not because that's Fidel behind me, my half African, half German friend from Berlin, but rather because there's Cynthia. Now, I didn't have a picture of the full team, but Cynthia is part of a team of 3 girls, 1 guy. that also inside Deutsche Post DHL right now are creating a spin-off. We hopefully get the funding decision 2 weeks from now. And they're all Chinese. There are 3 Chinese girls, 1 Chinese guy living in Bonn, and she's pretty much the, let's say, CEO to be. And she doesn't even speak a word of German. Again, also this completely unheard of, that a Chinese creates, or the team of Chinese, led by a Chinese that doesn't speak any German, creates a spin-off of a German company in Germany. Yeah? When you come to that point that this feels almost normal, then you're already quite advanced. Doesn't mean that you're perfect. Also, DHL Deutsche Post probably is not, but at least means that you have made some steps forward. Also, really important, be ready to hire crazy people. And I know that he doesn't mind me saying that because we actually wrote his job description last year together. He's head of moonshots at Deutsche Bahn, and yes, it really says that on his business card. Now, that's not what makes him crazy. What makes him crazy is that overall he's a pretty, let's say, extravagant person. He designs bow ties in his free time and sells them online. He organizes 70s-inspired theme parties in one of the best clubs in Munich and is back at work in Berlin the next day to organize panel discussions with members of the European Parliament, the German Parliament, and teams that want to build drones that land on Deutsche Bahn's railway stations. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff he does. Now, of course, an organization with the size of this one, with 300,000 people, can afford to pay one crazy person to do that kind of stuff. But I believe that you don't need an organization of 300,000 to afford at least one person like that. And for me, that's quite different from hiring somebody who spent 5 years in Ireland selling AdWords at Google, which makes him a Googler. You need to find these crazy people, and they usually don't come easily by themselves to you. You need to really go out there and look for people who have dreams, who have visions, not in the medical sense, but in the positive sense, and who really want to, inspire others, including people inside your organization. You need these as a first little bit of a virus, basically, in your organization to get things moving. And yes, sometimes they will feel miserable, and in fact, he sometimes does. Yeah, because he notices that everything around him is so resistant. Yeah? The antibodies work so well against his way of thinking. But in the end, he's there. He's been there now for 2 years in 2 different roles, or 2.5 years maybe by now. And I think he's doing a fascinating job, but you also really need the readiness of, let's say, top management, his direct boss, to support having a crazy person, to defend him, to increase the space, the breathing area that he has. And I think it's really important for an organization like a 100% state-owned company like Deutsche Bahn still is. Another one, 7 out of 10, almost there. You can almost go for another coffee. Demand ready-to-launch products from day one. Now, obviously, we learned before that this is a great idea to do, yeah, because entrepreneurs don't need anything else. You just put them into a room, after 3 months they come out, and it's a beautiful, polished product, ready to ship, millions of copies, and 0 defaults. This, of course, is not quite reality. I was working with A1 Group also this year. They had a team based at the Zagreb office of VIPNet, which will also soon be rebranded to A1, as I learned. And they want to develop, and they actually have developed, an algorithm that helps you find empty parking spots. And what I really love about VIPNet in this case is that they said, well, let's try this. We have issues with our own parking lot. Why don't you install a small camera at the roof and test your algorithm right here on our campus? Now, in most companies, I'm not sure whether that's true for your company as well. In most companies, it would take you, I don't know what, 3 months, 6 months to get the permission to install something on the roof that actually films people, where you could maybe see their faces. So at least wherever GDPR is in effect, this is really tricky to do. Now this is Croatia, so GDPR does apply. I think they just didn't care, to be honest. Yeah? So I think this is also really important. I'm not saying break the law. I'm certainly not saying break data protection laws, because I do care about them quite a bit. But I think sometimes you just need to, use human judgment rather than the legal department to find out whether a test of a couple of days or weeks is okay to do. And also need to be creative about how to find the resource for that. These guys, by the way, bought all the hardware with their private credit cards, because the internal procurement process would have been slower than the entire program, the entire time that we had for doing this. Another one, make sure to stick to your annual budgeting process. I just mentioned that, right? Make sure that when you tell people come up with a solution in 3 months, that you cannot give them any resource before the end of the year. Yeah, this is really, really important that whatever you do, you need to demand speed of them. That's why it's called agile. That's why we call it lean startup, and not be any faster than before yourself. Really important, yeah? Keep your process in place, as I said before. Make sure that you don't have extraordinary board meetings suddenly, or just that, somebody can call a top management team member on the phone and say, hey, can I get €1,000 for buying this and that hardware that I need. No, make sure that the process is always strictly maintained. Procurement should have all its forms filled out properly. Ideally, do public tenders, actually. I think that's the best. Yeah? So whatever you need, do a public tender, and then make sure that everything happens fast. So I mentioned this team already a few times before, as you noticed. In fact, I'm going to Edinburgh tomorrow with them, where we're participating in the global final of Climate Launchpad, an EU startup competition for, obviously, clean tech startups. As I mentioned, just to give you a feeling for what speed can really look like, when I first met this team last year in December, then they were selected into the entrepreneurship program that we installed at Deutsche Post DHL. I had Aaron on the phone from the UK, and Aaron said, Marius, I've been working on this for 2 years. If next year nothing happens in this organization, I'm going to quit and do it myself. And this was a quote that since then, I'm not quoting the first time here, I've been repeating over and over again at Deutsche Post DHL, but also at other clients, because probably the best entrepreneurs you have, you just haven't found yet, are the ones that are ready to leave to do what they believe in, and because they don't get the opportunity to do it. And how much they've been held back for 2 years, just to give you a sense of that, is that they literally went there to their UK management board, and DHL in the UK is a huge company in its own right. Yeah? So they have resources, they have thousands of employees, again, thousands of trucks, everything. They went there and said, look, we have the solution. We even got all the hardware donated from our supplier, the solar panel manufacturer, to try it on 17 vehicles. We have data proving that it works, and we have calculated that it pays off after 2 years. 5% fuel saving and pays off after 2 years. The management said, well, great, but honestly, if it doesn't pay off in less than 1 year, we don't invest in it. That's not exactly how you get innovation started. Again, 1 year ago, he called me and said, I'm going to quit my job if this entrepreneurship program is not going to get me to where I think I should be. At the end of this program, they were sent to India. That was not exactly where he had hoped to go. But luckily, India was only a short visit. And then in August, we got 1 million in funding internally from one of the divisions. We got a legal entity set up, I think, on the 1st of September. And we had a public market launch at the world's largest commercial vehicle show starting on the 19th of September in Hanover, Germany, where we had this booth that you see there, already with the new branding. You can see it in the back. It says trailer. It's all blue, so it's not even a DHL company anymore in terms of its public appearance. And obviously, DHL being used as to show off that they have a big major customer there. So we really turned this from an internal idea of 2 guys in the UK that had been struggling to make it happen even inside their own company for 2 years. We turned this into an external venture, launching at a trade show within a matter of months. And this is possible. And yes, it always means some friction, always means some things go wrong, it always means an additional round of meetings, but it is possible. And I would encourage you to try to see such kind of opportunities in your organization as well, because I'm quite sure that they are there. You just need to bring them to the light. Two more, bear with me. Maximize shareholder value from the start. Now, this is a very easy equation how to do that. A share that you never give away, you'll never have to buy back later, right? And this is playing to the topic of employee incentivization when you do entrepreneurship programs. I think somebody touched upon it briefly before, and I'm not saying that there's a golden rule. I'm not saying you always need to create spin-offs, as we did now in this case here at DHL. And by the way, also there, it's still not decided what the team really gets. Yeah, they're still on their old work contracts. They didn't get a salary increase, although they're now managing a legal entity. They did not get any shares really in any company yet, but at least there is a meeting scheduled for 2 weeks from now to discuss this further. So also there again, none of my client is perfect. But still, be aware that the people you want to have, the crazy people I mentioned before, the Googlers you maybe still want to have, I don't know why, but maybe you do, the interdisciplinary teams, I think I've said this now 4 times, enough, yeah? We didn't agree on this, by the way. But still, the people that you need to bring on board, the people that need to drive that bus that somebody mentioned before, probably if they come from the startup ecosystem, or if they have this mindset that they choose between a job in your entrepreneurship team and your innovation team, or in an external startup, they probably will demand something. These are probably risk-taking people, so they probably want to see risk reflected also in their potential upside. Again, this doesn't always mean that you need to have the same, let's say, vesting schemes as in a venture capital deal. It doesn't mean that you need to pay huge bonuses necessarily all the time, but you should find something that feels adequate. And you'll notice this anyway when you go out there hiring, not the first co-founder of an internal venture, but when you need to hire the second or third round of people, basically, the 30th, the 50th employee. I think you're going to feel this, because people that apply for a job with you then, or with a startup, will notice what it means to have a so-called ESOP, yeah, an employee share option program. And if you don't have something like this in place, you're going to have a much harder time finding people. As I keep telling my clients, yes, you're going to find people, but you, from the first moment you go out there hiring, have already reduced your potential audience to attract as applicants by probably 50%. If you don't mimic, if you don't replicate the incentive mechanisms of the startup world in something that should look like a startup, both to the outside world as well as to the employees you want to attract. Yeah, so again, make sure that you keep all shares to yourself. And most importantly, of course, also now when you go back and pitch this to your CEO or to the global CEO of the organization that you're for, I noticed many of you work for international companies, make sure that you tell them that you, of course, are the one, because you're based here in Serbia and because you have the smartest people in the world, which I believe you really partly do, you can defy all statistics. There is no reason to think that there will be only a 1 in 10 chance of success. Of course, yours will be near perfect. There's no reason to believe why it would take years and years and years of iteration and development until you really see both customers love your product and actually pay something for it. No, there is no reason to say that. Just say, I can do it. Next year, we're going to have lots of Instagrams, right? It's awesome. Now, reality looks a bit different. And now you know how it is with averages. An average is a number that you cannot really tell anything by. But the average data for European startups over an extended period of time is that it takes 9 years to exit. 9 years to exit. Which of your CEOs has been in office for more than 9 years? Who of you has been in his or her current job for more than 9 years? 1 person, 2 persons, okay. So if you had started something the day you took your job as an innovation manager or whatever you might be in your daily life, if you had started an initiative to create new ventures, create new products, create new innovation topics, by now you could maybe see the benefits because you've been in that job for longer than 9 years. Everybody else will not be there anymore by the time most things really mature, depending on how we define this, of course. And also, as there was some Dilbert drawing before where the Dilbert said, I'm going to be a billionaire then. No, you're usually not going to be a billionaire. The average exit value of a European startup is 30 million. Yes, I know, the newspapers are full of startups raising hundreds of millions in funding, but that's not the average. There are also a few unicorns, even in Europe. Maybe one day also in Serbia. I know you have some really great startups here, and some of them are really worth a lot, make a lot of money, have a lot of employees. Great. It's not the average. The average is 10 million invest, 30 million payback in the form of an exit proceed or whatever after 9 years. And this is for the ones that make it there. So the only thing that you can really do is, again, iterate, fail fast, find out what doesn't work, keep the investment low at the very beginning, but big enough so that people can actually do something with it, and then obviously nurture the ones that can actually go somewhere. Don't keep them limited to your footprint, everything we said before. Yeah, and bonus track, last one, avoid fun. Make sure it's really, really boring to do that stuff. Make sure it really feels like, work. It shouldn't be any fun, should it? Now, I know that's bullshit, especially here in Belgrade, because as in the beginning we said, I organized one of the biggest startup parties here in this country and also over in Serbia, together with 2 lovely colleagues of mine, Janko and Peter. One is Serbian, one is Croatian. I'm the only one who doesn't speak the languages down here. And we had a great time here, and I know it's possible, and I know that this is a special region with special potential. So I want to see you guys rock on. I want to see you guys do great things, not only on the startup side, but also in all your large organizations. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, let them come.
We're coming with questions. We bring questions to you. So, Georgia, will you do the first one?
So, since you're coming to Serbia this often in the past years, how do you see the local ecosystem development recently?
So, I do come here every now and then, and I've come here sometimes quite often, actually. And yes, I think I have a view on this one, but it's a very subjective one. I think there are many more experts here in the room who would tell you much better, including the colleagues from ICT Hub. What I really love is stories like an old friend of mine who was part of this program, Pioneers of the Balkans, 3 years ago. And I met him here last year at Balkan Venture Forum. He told me, Marius, the startup that we then had when we participated in your program, it actually failed. It didn't work. Now what I did is I joined a Silicon Valley-based startup, working from here. They have great funding. I can develop my skills. I can learn so much from them. But I know one day I'll have my own startup again. And today he's exhibiting outside here with a computer vision technology. And he approached me outside the door and said, Marius, actually there's something new in my life. I have a new venture. We raised funding here in Serbia, started to build a team, and now we have this great technology, and we believe it really can do something. So this, for me, is Now, in a nutshell, in one case study, basically, a beautiful example of how much here is possible. And this is only in 3 years. So I first met this guy 3 years ago. And that's really impressive. And that's probably faster than in most places.
Wow, perfect. Second question is, when you are a corporate employee and you want to spark an innovation, how important is the skill of lobbying and why?
The skill of?
Lobbying.
The skill of lobbying. Good question. Ideally, you need no skill in lobbying because your top management has understood the importance themselves, right? The only reason why you need to lobby people is because they ignore you. And so you need to sit in the lobby all day and wave at them and say, ha-ha, and da-da, and then you go in the elevator, do the elevator pitch. Da. Yeah. So to be honest, I think with most of my clients, actually that's not true. The two types of clients that we have as innovation consultants. Either they're the ones where top management has said, look, somebody should do something because we don't know how to, and they maybe allocate some budget, at least they nominate somebody. They also sometimes love to nominate somebody without a budget, and it's most fun. So there, the initial spark, the initial lobbying already has happened in the head of the top executive, and that is usually a good thing to happen. Usually it's a good thing to happen. Now, there are also people who somehow wake up one morning and find the word innovation manager on their business card as part of some other role, R&D, HR, procurement, whatever it might be. And they maybe watched a Shark Tank on TV the night before, whatever, and they realize, I haven't been really doing the innovation part of my job for a long time. So those people then really are the ones that need to do all the lobbying, and it can be painstakingly slow and really, really hard to do. What I would recommend to do is, as I said first, right, take all your top management to Silicon Valley, make them spend a lot of money, come back with flip-flops for you, and then it's easier. No, I think there is no one-size-fits-all approach, I'm sorry, but we can happily discuss this. So whoever asked the question, who has the same question in their mind, let's happily discuss this based on your specific circumstances.
Thank you so much, Marius.
Vielen Dank.
Sehr gerne.
Okay,
Voilà.
whatever. Thank you so much.